right, so we are here with Allie. Allie is like so many of us women who suffers from hormone imbalance and all the fun stuff that comes with PCOS. So I'm really just going to let you take the reins and talk about your story. So I'll just ask you some questions and then you just have at it. So um, what would you say your absolute biggest challenge was prior to starting your journey with Whole Story Health?
I'd probably say that the biggest challenge was like finding something that worked and
Yeah.
then or like trying everything under the sun and then not seeing results and just giving up and then going to like binge eat, because I'd be upset because it wouldn't work, making things
Yeah.
10 times worse.
Yeah. Yeah. I have so been there. I recently, in fact, have had so many women from all over the country talk to me about how they've been diagnosed with binge eating disorder. And I'm thinking that is just not a very fair diagnosis because it's more of a reaction, an emotional
Yeah.
reaction, and a chemical reaction to these super addictive foods. So, good. So, how how did that make you feel when you would try program after program or diet after diet and just kept ending up empty handed?
Well, I literally like I would feel I'd have the worst self-confidence. Like I wouldn't go swimming with my friends. And like if I did go swimming, I had to be like a certain group of friends that I knew were like not looking at me in any way. A lot of the times I never wanted to go anywhere, especially after I'd tried something for so long and then it didn't work. And I just felt like a beached whale is what I used to tell everybody, or a popped can of biscuits, depending on whatever, whatever happened. And so I wouldn't want to go anywhere because all throughout growing up, I was always the bigger one. And I hated going places where I knew all my friends were going to be who were wearing all these small clothes and like eating and drinking whatever they wanted to. And I would go and eat and do the same thing they were doing. But the next day I'd wake up like 5 pounds heavier. And I just
Yeah.
never wanted to go because I didn't want to be a part of it.
Yeah. So did you feel that way pretty much your whole life, like kind of the odd one out, like all your friends could eat whatever they wanted, but you always paid the price?
Yeah, I mean, that probably started about fourth grade, I'd say, honestly, because I'd always been a bigger child. I was sick when I was a baby, and they had me on all kinds of steroids when I was a baby, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And then, like, we would go back to school shopping with all my friends, and
Mhm.
they would be getting like fours and sixes, and I'd be over there in like 12s and like the fifth grade, and so it always made me feel like I couldn't relate to any of them or hang out or like spend the night on a whim because I couldn't share clothes with them and they always could, And if they asked to borrow my clothes, it was for like a sleep shirt because it was bigger. So it
Yeah.
did always put me on the outside.
Yeah. Do you think that maybe affected the way that you ate because of that as kind of an emotional response, just feeling like an outsider?
Definitely, because I didn't want to whenever I would get upset about things, I would eat or I would make a cake or
Mm.
and then eat the icing and the batter as I was doing it. And then I would feel like if all my friends went out to eat or if we were at softball practice and we went to go get fried chicken and candy and cokes before and after a game, I would feel like, well, if I don't do this, they're gonna think that I'm being weird. So I would just eat the same thing they were doing. So yeah, I would say it definitely made me feel very weird and it made me just want to fit in. But what I was trying to do to fit in wasn't working for me.
Right, right. So what do you think shifted when you started with Whole Story Health and your specific journey? What was that big change or that shift for you?
I would say really the biggest like shift and change that I realized. I mean, I know there was like little ones that I didn't realize that Robbie, my fiance, would be like, you're a lot happier now,
Yeah.
My biggest one was probably we went wedding dress shopping and they put me in a 22. and the 22 was just like the slightest bit too big, but it fit. And so I put it on and we ordered it. And then it came in like 4 weeks later, 3 or 4 weeks later. And I put it on and it literally fell off me. Like my shoulders were the only thing holding it up. And that was when I realized, like, oh, dang, like this is for real doing something. And even the girls at the store were like, girl, you're gonna blow away before your wedding. You have such
Yeah.
like you've done everything. I think that was the biggest like change because my whole attitude and mindset changed. Because for that first, because I went and got my dress probably about a month before I started. And
Uh-huh.
then when I started, I was still in that mindset of like, this isn't going to work. Like, I've just wasted all this time and effort. And I'm just gonna have to be this way the rest of my life. And then once I finally like saw physical results and not just like losing a pound on the scale or like my jeans not being quite as tight that day, I think that was the biggest like mindset change for me where I was like, okay, this is what I need to be doing. This is bettering me for the long term and not just for the now.
Yeah, I love that. So, with your mindset, what shifted in your mindset that has allowed you to stick with this? Because it's not easy to change your eating patterns that you've had your whole life. I mean, you have made huge sacrifices. You travel every weekend, you work very long hours with minimal breaks.
Yeah.
I have a lot of hairstylists and nurses, and y'all kind of have that same like, if you catch a break, it's 5 minutes. So
Yeah.
it's not easy, but you've done it. So what was the mindset shift that gave you that determination?
Really, I think the biggest thing for me was I was thinking about like how when I was 13 and 14, they told me that if I had another emergency cyst surgery, like they were taking my ovaries. And I know that if you're not healthy and you're not doing things you're supposed to be doing, that puts a damper on your fertility.
Mm,
And when I really started seeing like my mood change and like my waist change and all that, then I was really like, okay, if I want to be the best version of myself for not only myself, but for my future family and children and my nephew and my cousins, and actually be able to play ball with them in the yard and actually be able to run the bases and not just be like, well, I'm just hitting, I'm not running. I think
yeah.
that was when my mind was like, all right, you've got to change something, because if you don't, you're going to be miserable and you're going to end up being one of those people that just hermits in the house and eats their feelings away and complains about everything and doesn't do anything to change it, because that's at the point I was at.
Yeah. So, um, and then once you got results so quickly, that kind of led to more determination and discipline because you're like, okay, this is gonna
Yes.
work. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I used to literally like stay away from any type of scale or any type of anything that would tell me anything like that. And once I started seeing results, and like even if I went back a little bit, but then I like if I had to cheat because we went for a family meal or a birthday or something and I would gain a pound, but I'd get right back on my meal prepping and I would see it go right back down, and I would see my skin getting better, and like
Mm.
my eyes not be like a weird like cloudy yellow color and like brighten up. I think that was like the biggest thing that kept me going, was because I was seeing such a difference.
Mhm. Yeah. So what all aside from just the weight loss, what other physical differences did you notice that were pretty astonishing?
I noticed that my skin, so I've always had like skin that was prone to break out, like my pores were super big. I sweated, like I would sweat no matter where I was. I could be cold, but I'd still be sweating. And like really my skin was my biggest thing. Like my skin is cleared up. I don't even wear makeup anymore. Like I don't have makeup on today, not even mascara. All I wear is mascara to work. And I used to have to, if I bought foundation, it had to be 100% full coverage because I was not going to let anybody see how bad my skin was. And like the dark circles under my eyes have gone away. And I can tell like my ring, like I have to put a buffer on it, and this is the biggest one I could find. When Robbie proposed, this ring almost was too small,
Oh, wow.
and now it falls off with the buffer on there. So I think those things, other than physical, and then on top of that, my energy levels like skyrocketed. I used to go to work and like the thought of me working through lunch and not being able to sit down for an hour and like rest was nowhere in my head because I was like, I'm gonna die. Like if I have to stand up all day long, there's no way that I'm gonna make this. But
Yeah.
now, like my energy level is so good, I can work, and then I get home and like on the weekends, if Robbie wants to go somewhere, I can still go and be able to hang out with my friends and not just be miserable and deranged for the next 4 days because I did that. And I think that was really one of the biggest ones was my energy coming back.
Yeah, I love that. And all that you're talking about, that's all hormones. I see so many women in these PCOS groups and they're trying to find creams for their skin because their skin is terrible, or, different creams or laser treatments for hair growth because women with
Yes.
PCOS tend to have excess testosterone, and that's not going to fix it because you're attacking an inner problem from the
Yeah.
outside. But
And
you Okay.
speaking of the laser hair removal, I my mom ended up getting that for me, and I'd had it done before when I was 15, and it
Mhm.
didn't work. Like we went
Mhm.
through all the different sessions on their highest laser setting, and it didn't work. And I'm getting it now, and like that was another thing. Like you can see in my before and after pictures, I have like a 5 o'clock shadow. And then in my other ones, there's nothing there. And that really made a difference to me because when my mom told me she'd bought them for me, I was like, that's stupid. We've already done this before and it
Yeah.
didn't work. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, it's not going to work again. But getting my hormones under control, like, that's why I don't feel like I have to wear makeup anymore because I'm not trying to cover up my beard, you know?
Yeah.
And it makes such a big difference just doing that. Now, I still had a few that I had to get rid of because,
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody has that facial hair, but it was that made a huge difference. It was that
Yeah.
part.
Because you still had some already there that you needed
Yeah, to get
removing,
rid of.
but you
Yeah.
don't have that constant regrowth. Yeah.
No, no, I don't. I haven't. I used to literally have to shave my face every morning and every night. Like if we were going somewhere, I would not go somewhere unless I could shave my face. Like I kept literally would keep disposable razors in Robbie's truck in case he made a spontaneous little plan and I had hair on my face. And
Yeah.
now I don't do that because it doesn't grow back as much because I don't have all those things making it grow.
Yep, yep. Your testosterone is leveled out. You've got proper amounts of estrogen now, which is making it easier for your body to let go of weight. And you had pretty significant issues with PCOS and a couple of other medical events when you were younger that really scared you as far as energy levels with the family and fertility.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. You don't have to go into long detail, but just a little bit about the things that you faced that crippled you for a while.
So when I'd say probably about the 8th grade was when it all started. I started having really bad pains in my lower abdomen, and we went everywhere, and they always were like, well, we'll take out your appendix. We'll try that, and they took out my appendix. So then the next month it would happen again. So then that's when we started going to the OB, and he was like, well, you have polycystic ovarian syndrome. Here's some birth control.
Mm.
It might affect your joints. You're 14, you play softball, it doesn't really matter. Take it anyways. And so I would take it and I wouldn't have any type of period whatsoever because I'd skip all those because I didn't want it to hurt. And then once I finally, like, when we realized that that wasn't very good because I was feeling bad because they also had to put me on Zoloft, I think is what it's called, an antidepressant, because they were worried about my hormones like going crazy on that at such a young age. I finally got off of it because it made me feel so bad. Well, then I was having cysts every single month. So between the ages of like 14 to like 16, I'd say I had probably 3 or 4 ovarian cyst surgeries. And he told me that if I had to come back for another emergency one, because it would be like I would be in class and I would drop and hit the floor and we would take me to the hospital and he'd be like, emergency surgery right now. And every time he
Wow.
went in, he would find a cyst, he would find endometriosis. And then once all that kind of I mean, it never went away. It got to the point where I was having to take like hydro hydrocodone, whatever the pain medicine is, and like it wouldn't even touch it for the most part. But once we went through all that, then I got diagnosed with POTS. And I went from being a relatively good athlete to where I was playing in tournaments every weekend, softball every night, practicing every day, basketball, everything you could think of, to being on the couch and not being able to wash my own hair for 2 years and having a shower chair and my mom having to bathe me and having to basically drop out of school and finish up. I finished up a semester after my graduating class, but it made all my hormone stuff go crazy because they were telling me, first they told me it was all in my head. They told me I was crazy and made me go see a shrink and do all this stuff. And that was tough because it, like, I had to relearn how to breathe, relearn how to control my blood pressure, relearn how to control my body temperature and all that stuff. And that all, we finally got all that kind of settled probably about 3 years ago. We found a doctor in Tennessee who's a holistic doctor and wasn't just one of those like, well, in my medical book, we don't technically have anything for this. So we're just
Right.
going to say that you're crazy. And here's like some blood pressure medicine. Here's some antidepressant. Make sure you drink Gatorade, all this stuff. And none of it ever helped. But then we found a lady in Tennessee who's a holistic doctor, and she really like, I have not been on any type of prescription medicine since we had gone to her. I've been off all prescription medicine, just supplements and like what she was detoxing out of me at the clinic and all that stuff. And it made me get back to where I was actually able to go do stuff and able to stand up and do hair all day. Because if you would have asked me 4 years ago if I was going to be able to stand up all day or actually even have a job where I wouldn't have to go for a day and then lay on the couch for 3 days, I would have been like, no, I'm probably gonna have to be on like disability.
Yeah.
And so that kind of all fixed, but we still didn't get the hormone regulation under control because that's just something, I mean, I'd never learned the proper way to like give my body nutrition and the proper way to like fluctuate, help like keep everything from fluctuating from one high to one low.
Mhm.
But that was part, that was a really big part of my life that I had to miss out on because of all the doctors just trying to give me medicines and make me fit in a box where I wasn't fitting in a box.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important to point out. I think that's what happens so often. That, a lot of these hormonal issues are relatively new. The reason that PCOS is so prevalent now, it's a condition of decades of a lifestyle. Now we've got all these artificial light sources and artificial foods and all these things that our bodies aren't recognizing, and they're being thrown way off whack. And when a woman's ovulation process is stopped, via
Mm.
birth control, it throws everything off. And then
Yeah.
we have all of our little circadian rhythms thrown off because we're not sleeping at night and getting sunlight during the day like our bodies are designed to do. Our hormonal process is just out of whack, and that affects every facet of health. So the fact that you got a hold of this now before you started trying for a family is going to serve you so well, and just sets you up for the life that you want, versus being 45 looking back for a life you wish you had had. So I think
Yeah.
that is absolutely amazing. What would you say to somebody who is on the fence about taking a natural approach to hormone regulation and getting their life back?
Well, I actually have this conversation a lot because I realize a lot of my clients have the same thing that I did or do. And whenever they tell me, like, well, my doctor says this, and I don't know, it's like natural stuff, whatever, blah, blah. I'm like, well, first of all, God made the world, okay? And he
Mhm.
put everything on this earth that we could ever need to solve any problem that we could ever need. And he
Mhm.
gives us the ability to do that. And he gives people the ability and the brain smarts to be able to figure out different ways to do it. And whenever, most of the time, they always come back with, well, all the natural stuff is so healthy. And I always tell them, well, can you really put a price on your health? Like,
Right.
you're paying all these medical bills that they're not helping you at all. Like you're
Mhm.
just paying them to cover up the problem and not fix it.
Mhm.
Wouldn't you rather pay just a little bit and actually fix the issue and be able to
Exactly.
continue to fix the issue for the rest of your life instead of having to take some kind of drug every single day?
Yeah, yeah, that's such a good point. If you look at what you'll pay on the front end to actually treat it, naturally versus what you'll pay the rest of your life trying to combat the symptoms, and that
Yep.
just compounds. I mean, yeah, you're right. You nailed it. Um, so what would you say was the most challenging thing about your journey?
Probably the most challenging thing would be, especially to start off with, was like holding myself accountable. Like I text you every day, and I know that if I eat something I'm not supposed to, and I'm almost 100% positive it's going to show up on the scale, and I'm going to have to text you the wrong thing, the thing that I don't want to text you, like that helps. But at the same time, I feel like having accountability for myself was the hardest thing to like make sure if I had a bad day at work, I wasn't just going to get ice cream because that was my go-to. Like I was
Yeah,
going to eat sweets and get over everything. But that and probably like staying positive even when I did have setbacks, because
yeah,
I would have like the 5 pound setback or whatever, and my brain, automatically would go to, "Oh, well, let's give up. It's not working anymore."
yeah,
But that was the hardest part, was to keep pushing through and realizing that I'm basically self-destructing whenever I was doing that. And I had to work through that and realize like you're gonna have setbacks. Nobody's perfect.
mhm,
You've got to keep going. So that was probably
yeah.
the hardest thing.
Yeah, and even with a 5 pound setback here and there, at 8 weeks, you were down what, 33 pounds?
Hmm.
I think you're at 40 pounds down
Yep.
now.
At 40 now.
And what week are you on?
Week 11, I think,
Yeah,
was week 11, day one today.
40 pounds in 11 weeks. And that's with experiencing those ups and downs. Like we all have to be reminded. I do too. That's why I have a coach in everything, because we think the journey to success looks like a straight line, and
Yeah.
it's not. It's like this the whole time. But you're just such a living testament to what happens when you just reassess, reevaluate. Okay, this is not the end of the world, and like you
Yeah.
said, you just get right back to it because that's what makes overall lifetime change. So that's great. And I did want to touch just quickly on your moods and your energy. So I know that you've mentioned several times that you and Robbie both have noticed the difference in your mood. So tell me a little bit about what that was like before versus what it was like after, and how quickly you started to see a change in your moods.
So before, if any like slight inconvenience happened, or even if it wasn't an inconvenience, if I made it all up in my head and it wasn't
Mhm.
really happening, there was no possible way for me to be able to control my emotions. Like I would start talking super fast and try to talk louder than whoever I was talking to and get really defensive. And nothing anybody else said was right at that moment, because I firmly believed I was right and I had no way to logically sit down and look at myself, because I couldn't keep my hormones under control. I would
Mhm.
get mad all the time. And then on top of getting mad, I was tired all the time. So
Mhm.
I really couldn't control them. And me and Robbie, like, he would say something, or he's in school at Starkville, and so I'm at home, and that's a big like distance in between,
Mhm.
especially while we're trying to plan a wedding. And even before we got engaged, he was always at Jones and I was at home or something like that. I would get really upset if he didn't want to spend time with just me, and I would just get like ugly crying, upset about everything. And now, really, I'd say within like the first 3 weeks, probably 2 or 3 weeks, now, like something happens, I'm just like, no, it's not the end of the world. We can fix this. Like,
Yeah.
for an example, this past weekend, me and two of my bridesmaids went to Madison to get bridesmaid dresses, and Robbie and his roommates went to work on a dove field. Well, we had planned for me to ride back with my bridesmaids and for Robbie to drive me back to Flowwood on Monday after he got done with classes. And whenever he decided to go help him with the dove fields, he was like, Allie, I'm not going to have time to do a lot of my schoolwork. Like, I know y'all had this plan for a while, but like, we're going to go hunting there. And we really, like, I need to go help him. And if that would have been 3 months ago or however long before I started, if that would have been in January, I would have lost my cool and like wouldn't have talked to Robbie for probably 2 days and like just been super upset. Like I would have started having second guesses on everything. But I was like, you know what? I understand. Like we need to help. We're going to be there. We're literally about to spend the rest of our lives together. What's one weekend of you not driving me back? Like, it's fine. Like, we still
Yeah.
have bigger things to worry about. And he was like, wow, thanks for being understanding. You know,
Yeah.
so it made a huge difference with that. And it's like when I talk to my clients, if they say we have all kinds of, you know, opinions and attitudes that come in getting their hair done, and we end up taking the butt of all of that because we're like untrained therapists, you know. And
Yeah, you really are.
it made it to where I would hear it and I wouldn't get upset about it and make me be in a bad mood for the rest of the day. So it made a huge difference in that.
That's so good. When we're looking at changing our lives, you know, a lot of times the easy thing to look at is I want to look better in clothes. But I mean, things that you've mentioned, you want to set yourself up for a healthy pregnancy. You want to increase your fertility. You want to live a long, healthy life. You want to have a happy marriage. And counseling is great, but sometimes there's so much dysfunction going on biologically that going to work on strictly, you know, mental and emotional is not going to help. When you're not sleeping well and your blood sugar is not regulated, your prefrontal cortex, that part of your brain that allows you to make thought through decisions, it's basically shut off. And so that's why your reactions were so strong earlier, you know, before you started. But now you've gained access, like full access to a part of your brain again that allows you to kind of moderate, to think and realize this is not the end of the world. There's so much going on now that it's all connected and running harmoniously. I mean, you're like a different person in so
Yeah,
many
literally.
ways. That's amazing.
Literally.
Well, it is so much fun working with you, and I really appreciate you allowing me to interview you because there are so many other women who have parts of your story. So many have all of it. You know, they struggle with all the things that you have struggled with. And to see you persevere, it's going to give them the hope that they need and the determination to be able to take this on for themselves. So you are inspiring so many different women just from your story, and we really appreciate it. So
So it's been fun.
yeah, yeah. And I wanted to ask before we sign off, was there anything else that you wanted to add?
Um, I mean, if anybody ever has any questions, they can always call me because I'm your biggest advocate.
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody that sits in my chair, they are going to hear about you and they
Yeah.
get your number or they get your Facebook account, you know. But I'd say the best thing that's come out of this so far is how much I've been able to grow. Like, I've always been a people person, but when my hormones were so out of whack, I was like a 13-year-old girl who had just gotten like all these hormones thrown on her
Mm.
and didn't know how to deal socially. And now I feel like I'm back to the old me where anybody comes up, we're friends. We can talk.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not worried about them judging me for how I look, even though nobody really ever is, you know, but it's all in your head at that moment because you're not happy with yourself.
Mhm.
And that's been the biggest thing is like learning to be happy with myself throughout this whole journey and still loving the person that I was before the whole journey started. Because if it wasn't for all of that, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, God uses every second of our lives for his glory. And so there's some things that we have to go through in order to be the person that he wants us to be to help others. And so, I'm just so glad to see you on the other side, and can't wait to continue to watch your story unfold. And hopefully, you won't have to order too many different sizes. How many times have you had to reorder your wedding dress now?
We've had to reorder it twice. So we're
Twice.
waiting on another size to come in. And every time we order it just a little bit too small to where like it zips, but you can't sit down,
Uh-huh.
And then we'll wait a month after we get it in. And then we always know it's time to go back when my mom can literally stick her arm down the back of my dress.
Yeah.
So we're waiting. Hopefully we don't have to do too much more of that. I mean, I wouldn't be mad if we did. It's a good
Yeah.
thing. It's a good problem to have, but
Yeah. Yeah.
it's been exciting to see that part.
Yeah. Well, we look forward to seeing your wedding day pictures. And thanks again so much, Allie. And we will talk soon.
All right, thanks.